Hello and welcome to the Inquisitorial Archive. My name is Kevin O'Rourke and today I'm going to be reviewing Pathfinder by Piazzo Publishing. Pathfinder, I think it's pretty popular, a lot of people know of it, but that hasn't stopped me before. It's kind of an odd history with it. I do like the fact that effectively they started off, they're just going to do some errata, I think, for 3.5 D&D because Forthead had been published. And I knew some people wouldn't necessarily be as keen on Forthead. So, just some of the writers will tighten things up and, one last set of errata to set it off. Maybe refine things. But they ended up changing so much stuff. One thing led on to another. As anybody knows who's house rules something and then they found that has had unexpected knock-on effects. They changed so much stuff that they published it as this big old book. And to me, it may be called Pathfinder. But in my head, this is D&D. And in a lot of people's head, this is D&D. I've played 3.0. I've played 3.5. A lot of 3.5. And I've played Forthead. I've GM'd, or DM'd as some people say. I don't like DM, the sound of it. I've GM'd, and I've played a lot of different games. Not a huge amount with Forthead, but a substantial enough. I've clocked up quite a few hours with it. Ran 2 campaigns with it, and I've played in about 2 or 3 campaigns of where Forthead never really caught on me, but I just have to I can't feel like I have to mention them because they do bear comparison, particularly 3.5. One of the first things I like is you get your race and your class. They're the main things that you define your character first off. You go through the classic, 20 levels in it. But what I do like, I'm just going to have to compare it to 3.5 and 3.0. I do like how they've handled the races. Effectively, everyone's getting another +2 to their stats. In the case of humans, it's a +2 they can put wherever they want. In the case of elves, before they used to get +2 dex, -2 con. Now they're getting an additional +2 to their int. It's nice. It actually is giving everyone a little bit of a buff. I quite like it. I quite like how they handle it. And half-orcs can be used to play a lot of things. I remember running a 3.5 game when the players wanted to play a half-orc paladin, and I was trying to help them make it work, and it just... He still argues to say it worked. He said, yeah, it worked a bit. That's because the way the campaign went, you ended up with some crazy templates. Like, you got the half-dragon template. It's like, because you got that and another template on top of that, your character worked. He was devastating close combat. But if you just be a barbarian or a fighter, you'd be way better. But he liked the character, and the character was interesting and fun. But as well as I liked how they handle half-elves, because in 3.0 and 3.5, half-elves just didn't work that well. You're worse than human, you're worse than elf. And that's a shame because the RP benefits you can have from them are great because you're caught between two worlds, much like a half-orc. But not everyone wants to do a half-orc. It's like, okay, fair enough. But it works out quite well. And it's not like, it's quite similar to, I've seen previous things like the World of Warcraft RPG. Quite nice job for the half-elves and that. But that was the first thing which I actually really liked, and then the fact that they give you so much variety in rolling sets. And advise you, this is going to be pretty powerful. One of the ones I really have liked is for a really powerful game, it says, you can do this. It's a very powerful way of doing it. You get 24d6, you roll them, you can put them together in groups of 3 in any way you want. You're discarding some of the lowest ones, the lowest 6, and you're putting them together in whatever way you want. Some people fall into the trap of going, I'll do this, whatever, but I like it's a bit more customizable as for a player as a GM compared to 3.0 and 3.5. One thing I like is the XP tracks from a GM point of view, because if you want your game to progress slowly, you want it to really take a long time, or if you want the game to go quite quickly, you can pick a different XP track. So you can pick the slow, medium, or fast, which is nice. It helps get stuff done. The fact that you have effectively, compared to our D&D things, you've got the player's handbook and the GM's guide in the same book, because those are the core rules you need. You got your bestiaries and things like that. These are the main things you need. What I really like is the fact with all the classes, they seem to have buffed everyone and made everyone a lot more variety. But they've buffed the people who really need a buffing a lot. Like Fighter, unfortunately, aside from 1 or 2 feats which you could only get through Fighter, it just it was hard to stick with fighter because, and I wouldn't advise people who have in 3.5 game and stuff to stick with straight up fighter because you kind of want to go for prestige class, but they do have it here that, you know, I find with Pathfinder you can really just stick with the main class the whole way through, and the alternate ranks are nice, but it's just nice looking through all the stuff that you have these options that for a ranger, you got your barbarians, you know, they're pretty standard, quite similar to what you had before. You've got your bards, but when you come to stuff like the clerics, turn undead has been changed. You can get it more like it was before if you spend feats on it, but it's just channeling energy instead. You're channeling positive energy so you can heal all living things with range, or you can damage all undead things with range. You pick one or the other, and they've got a lot more domains in the core book, which is really nice. I quite like how they've worked it out there. So you've got more variety amongst the clerics, which is quite nice, because one of the best things is if you look at the advancement table for the cleric, is you've got stuff coming in the whole way through. You've got additional stuff. Whereas if you look at the 3.5 and 3.0 cleric for D&D, you get stuff at level 1, and you're still getting stuff as you go through. But for the special stuff, you're not getting bonus feats, you're not getting any of this stuff. It looks kind of sad to look at it. It's like, yeah, you're bringing up your casting ability and you're bringing up your base, you know, your saves and things like that. I was like, Druids, I like what they've done with Druids. You know, they're pretty similar to how they've been like and stuff, but they've clarified stuff. They've nailed it down. Fighter, I love what they've done with it, so that you're just really good with your equipment. That you continue reducing the armor check penalties for your armor, stuff like that. I've had players play them. People have loved it generally, and I've played a fighter a bit myself at lower levels. I haven't got to the stage where I get those ones, but at lower levels generally there wasn't a problem for fighters anyway, because you get all these feats which are fantastic. But the armor training feat reduces the armor check penalty, increases the max dex saves. The max dex you can use in your armor and stuff. And you've got the bravery thing, which gives you bonuses against fear checks because you're a fighter. And then you get, you know, your weapon training in specialized different groups. It's a lot more customizable, and it gives you a lot more bang for your buck, and gives you a reason to stay in the class, aside from I'm getting more feats, which is like, yeah, but you kind of start thinking, should I go into something else after a while? But not so much in Pathfinder anymore. Straight up fighter, it can work. And that's one of the things I really praise Pathfinder first. It gives you the chance to stick. You can just stick with the main stuff if you want. Especially when they introduce archetypes. Although they're not in the main book, I'll talk about them a bit. Monk, they handle it quite well. Quite similar to 3.5. But they just clarify some of it. The Paladin, once more, just keeps going the nice route. But they've got the nice option that they have similar things like Rangers and some of the other ones, where it's like the stage when you could get your mount. Not everyone liked getting a holy mount. I've played games where I was playing a Paladin in 3.5, and I never actually used that damn thing in combat. I went off and I got a goddamn celestial hippogriff, and I used to ride around that thing cinematically the whole time for some stuff, and it was awesome. But I didn't use it actually for combat that much. But you got the option of, you know, channeling energy through your blades and stuff like that, which is like, that's actually really cool to have this option. You can do this or this. It's nice. Ranger, if you know, you can choose to either have an animal companion, which a lot of people hated having an animal companion because you had a crappy druid's animal companion that wasn't really that handy in a lot of people's opinions. But it's like, well, you can do that, and the animal companions do seem a bit better in this, or you can basically share your favorite enemy with everybody else. I love the additional options for Rogue. The fact you can get little zero level spells for Rogue. So you've got a little tiny, you can potentially get if you want to go that way, you can get a tiny little bit of magic casting with a rogue a certain number of times per day, which doesn't seem like a big thing, but I love the RP idea of going off and getting like mage hand or some other small zero level spells that, you know, if you use creatively, is like, yeah, your rogue knows a tiny bit of magic. Could be quite cool. Some of the things I love the most, aside from the fighter for the classes, is the change to sorcerer. The bloodlines is such a huge character building thing, and it's like, yeah, it's not just spells that make sorcerers different. Your actual bloodline's a huge thing. It's really cool, and I've seen people start really thinking about their characters, encouraging to come up with even more in-depth backgrounds, stuff that their character doesn't necessarily know about, but why they've got these bloodlines. And you don't have to go into that detail, but people just naturally do, and they're like, well, on which bloodline will I pick? Oh, I'll pick Celestial. Where do I have a Celestial? Where do I have a Celestial creature in my ancestry? Or taking different approaches. Like, Yeah, no, I like it. And then you got the wizard. The always said the specialist wizards, but it's more of an option. It's more interesting to do a school of magic and getting different things, and I quite like how it's worked out. You can do your universalist and you get some stuff, but I really like the idea of specialist wizards myself. A lot of it compared to 3.0. Oh, another thing is that I love is the difference they've done with skills. That class skills, you just get a miscellaneous +3 bonus if you've at least one rank in a class skill. And your skills, you don't get the multiplying by first and different things like that. You just get, so you only get your int plus whatever the base number is for your class, and it just works out so for the number of skill points. You don't have as many skill points on the sheet, but your ranks don't need to be as high because you get the cross-class thing. And if you go, well, I want to have a fighter who has ranks in knowledge religion or knowledge the planes because of his background, I encourage you to keep going with it, because yeah, you're not getting the bonuses because your class isn't good at it, but you can do it, and you can actually be quite good at these things if you keep putting the points in, because it's something to do with your background, because you were a wizard's apprentice after your master was killed by this demon, so you know some stuff about demons and stuff from the planes. That's why you've got knowledge of the planes. You can't cast magic because, you know, he just had you scrub the pots all day. That was what he had you doing. But it's cool to encourage you to role play like that. It just works out so well. One other big changes is for grapples and things like that, and bull rushes and all those various different things, they've introduced 2 stats: the combat maneuver bonus and the combat maneuver defense. These are based off your stats, your base attack bonus. It's just really nice that it's streamlined. Not everyone likes it. I think Outsider68, Sean Connors, mentioned in his review of Pathfinder, forgive me if I'm wrong about this, but I think he was saying he didn't particularly like the change of grappling rules because they were quite comfortable with grappling rules, and that works for him and his gaming group. And they just changed it back to 3.5, but overall the whole thing just works so much better. It's so much tighter and it works out fantastically well. I just like how it works out. Everything just seems to be that little bit better in the different respects. You know, some people like Forthead, and I like Forthead. Forthead's fun, but it just doesn't feel. I guess part of it's it doesn't feel quite right to me. I'm quite happy to play in a game of Forthead. You know, it's fun, but I get kind of part of it's almost like a feeling more that I get from playing a board game when combat comes on, or playing a multiplayer Game of Magic or something where you're working with someone, you're knocking off combos and stuff, and that can be really cool. That is fun. That's the kind of fun you don't necessarily get quite as much in D&Ds with, and more facilitates stores at. But you feel like you're being locked in with Forthead a bit. But you know, there's different ways around these kind of things. One of the things I do love is they start introducing some of the later on books. I usually don't like to talk about books outside of different things. They introduce archetypes. I've seen things like archetypes in some of the, you know, stuff outside the core, and you know, and even in the just outside the core books, but in 3.5 and stuff. But it's just nice that you can go off and it changes. You lose this, but you gain this. You lose this, but you gain this. And I've seen people doing it in a game going running soon. One of the players wants to play a half-orc cleric of the god Saranray. I'm probably mispronouncing that, but he wanted his character to previously been a bandit. So I went through some of the books with him. I picked up Ultimate Combat, and that's got the Crusader, which means it's diminished his spell casting ability a little. But in place, he's gotten some extra feats and things. He's getting access to things like weapon specialization. Eventually, when he's level 10, he can get weapon specialization, where a fighter can get a level 4. It's a nice additional level of choice without going off and having to necessarily make all these new classes. It just works out well. It's kind of, you know, it does invite comparison with 3.5 because it's, you know, based on it. You know, you get the back, you see 3.5, you know, compatible, open game license. It's okay. What I do like as well is that you end up with, you know, you've got your prestige class in the main book, and you've got, you know, pretty much your basic prestige classes plus the Pathfinder class and stuff. However, you've got all, like I said, it's like the Dungeon Master's Guide for 3.5, and that you've got your spells and your scrolls and all these different things in the main book. You know, you've got them all here. You've got all the different bits of gear, you know, including the nice little pictures. The fact that the entire book is color pictures is nice. Yeah, you got that in Dungeons and Dragons, Fort Head and stuff, which you have to praise him for. Looks really cool, but just going through the book, it helps you get more in the mood for these kind of type things, like where you go into a section of magic and you can see all these vampires running around versus like you've got your paladin, your mage and stuff. It inspires you as you're reading it, and it's just cool. It's everything's a bit more powerful than it used to be, and some people have talked about the knock-on effects are quite good. Like that, the knock-on effects, that stuff becomes a bit less dangerous. I don't love everything about it. Like how incorporeal works, as somebody pointed out before. I didn't notice it straight away, but I remember, I think it was Tetsuo 57. I might be wrong on that, but I think it was Tetsuo 57. Watch his review. I hadn't actually realised yet because I hadn't deployed a incorporeal creature in the game. The fact that instead of having a 50% miss chance, you only take 50% of damage, which is something I had noticed in D&D Fort Head. I hate it in Fort Head. I don't like it because you're going to take damage. You're only taking half damage. Yeah, it saves you the roll, but that makes a big difference and makes things a bit too predictable to fight. I like as well that it encourages you to stick with a class. It encourages you, as opposed to before where it penalised you for going to other classes, because sometimes you're fully intending to keep going straight with this one class the whole way, but through character development your character has gone off and they think, well, actually no, my character's really gotten in good with that my character has had a revelation and they are now going to try and effectively become a paladin or a cleric, or the cleric's he hasn't lost his fate, but he might decide to say, I'm going to start taking levels in fighter because my guy's getting more militaristic. He's not necessary, not that we can, it's just, it gives you that option. If you stick in a class as they have in the core book, if it's your favourite class, every time you take a level in it, you get either +1 hit point or +1 skill point, your choice, which is really nice. And I know some people have mentioned that, why would you take the skill point? It's like, because the skill points are awesome, and because especially if you have a class that doesn't necessarily give that many skill points compared to the number of skills that it has, getting these things as class skills is such a huge bonus. It's really nice. Of course, the hit points are nice for purely just combat stuff, but the extra skill points are great. I've taken my time. I kind of taken an approach with a fighter I did not too long ago, where basically it's like, when I'd roll my hit points. I waited till I rolled my hit points after level 4 I made the choice. And if I rolled okay, if I got an okay numbers, like grand, but if I rolled like a 1 or a 2 on the D10, I was like, I'm going to take the hit point this level, but by and large I was taking the skill points so I could flesh out stuff from his background, like increasing his ranks and knowledge and nobility. It's not a class skill, but once more, that's the handiness of it all. You've got most of the stuff. If you just want to run the game with one book, although it is a big book, so some people might find it pricey, but remember, this is actually the equivalent of like 2 D&D books. And given the fact that you can find pretty much most of the stuff on, there's 2 main Pathfinder SRDs online, you can find the monsters and stuff on there if you want. So you can just run it with just this book, print off pages for character sheets, and that's it. Because it's all during this days. Hell, even if you've got like a bunch of 3.5 books, you can use most of the stuff. You might have to work out their combat maneuver bonus and defense and things like that, and there's little nitty-gritty little things, but it works out well, and I can thoroughly recommend it to anyone. It's a little more one of the things that does go against it, to be honest, is a lot of the mechanics focus around combat, but a lot of people just like to resolve social stuff themselves, and they like to resolve the social stuff through talk, mainly through role playing. You get a little rolling the dice in there as well, but I think it works well. It's just, if you're going for a game where there is going to be at least a decent amount of combat, or if you want to go for something that feels like D&D, this is D&D, as I said, to me. And I do love the fact you've got the dragon covers. Like, he's going to kill them. They're screwed. That's a dragon. So they're unless they've really come up with a good plan, or he's just after coming from finding another group of adventurers, he should probably die. He should probably kill them. But it's just nice to see that kind of type thing with the game. It just gels and meshes together well for me. It's an easy transition. Whereas You know, I've run games of Fourth Ed where people are like, oh, okay, yeah, that was fun. And I was like, yeah, no, they're happy with it. Fourth Ed's fun. Who've been playing 3.5, but Pathfinder found it to be much easier shift. But I know there are probably some people who prefer Fourth Ed, and that's fine. One of the things that does go against it compared to Fourth Ed, but not against not the 3.5 because they improved on it a bit, is trying to introduce it to new people. There's a lot of rules, a lot of combat stuff. It's not necessarily quite as simple to do character creation as some other systems, but it's not the most overly complex one, and a lot of people are familiar with it from either D&D or the 3.0 and 3.5 open games license days, where the basic mechanics are all over the place. So it's a little bit it can be a little bit more difficult than it necessarily should be to make characters when you're introducing new people. You just need a little bit of patience with people and just do it like that. It's like, yeah. Artwork is fantastic. What you get for what you're paying is well worth it, especially with all the free, stuff that you have on the SRDs that you can just use. The fact you can run it with just the one book, as you can with many RPGs, but still, you don't end up on any monsters really in the book that I can recall seeing. But you don't need them because you got that SRD, and you're probably going to end up picking up the bestiaries like I did after a while, because it works. So I'll leave it at that. I do strongly recommend it. I'll see you again. Goodbye.